Um, Dr. Harini, hello.
Hi. Hi.
Sorry for the interruption.
No problem.
Harini, hello. Oh
Hi,
my,
can you hear me?
Facebook is for the interruption.
Oh, no problem.
Harini, hello.
Okay, there's a feedback again.
I didn't close my Facebook. Okay, this is we are
Okay.
5 minutes before. So this time, yeah, welcome to the live space of the Movement Studio. And quick revision what we did the last time, and the video is up on the page and on our YouTube page as well. We talked about children growing up actively, the necessity of movement for kids, necessity of dance for children. And when we say kids, we're talking about 3 years to 15 years. How to pace out that training, how to make sure children get a variety of movement and why it is important, and the importance of free play for children. So we talked about these things. That was last session. And then we started this session and I live streamed it to my personal page instead of to the Movement Studios page. And we were talking about injuries, preventive measures, how to make sure injury can be prevented, not entirely avoided. It's part of sport and movement. And what are some common injuries, and we'll come to all of that later. But to summarize what we were talking before we had to stop the first live stream was about Dr. Harini's background in dance medicine. So I would like for her to talk again about what dance medicine is. And
Okay, so quickly and short. So dance medicine is basically where we look at dance as a sport, and it is a sport. Most people don't really know that. They don't consider dance to be a sport form, but then it is as challenging and as demanding as any other sport. In some cases, when you look at the injuries that come out of dance, you might even, I don't know, match it with MMA or something. So it's got that much of physical loading on the dancers, on the athletes. So that is why dance medicine is so important. Yeah. And that is why I love dance medicine. Plus, this is something I missed out last time, and I want to add that point now, is that I got inspired to take up dance medicine by Prerna.
Thank you. I am truly, truly honored. Thank you for mentioning that. So yes, the dance medicine that Dr. Harini studied specifically builds on an understanding of ballet and what happens in ballet, and also the dance styles that derive from ballet. My God, why is it? I'm not sure if this is streaming. Okay. And
sure it is.
Yes, but the principles remain the same, and whatever principles apply to the body that is training in ballet can also be applied to other dance styles, is something we discussed. And then we went into talking about pain and how the human body understands pain, how the human brain is connected to it. So Dr. Hani, could you just rewind and tell us again what you were saying?
Yeah. So first thing, like I just said, is that pain is very subjective. Pain is not the same for everyone. It can be different for each of us. So when we ask people to grade it on a scale of 1 to 10, doesn't mean it's the same thing. You know, an 8 or a 7 for me is not an 8 or a 7 for you. It could be a 10, it could be a 5.
Yeah.
So it's very important that we take a few moments to, or if you're a parent, then observe your kid from day one. Observe your kid and understand what is your kid's pain threshold. So that when your kid says something hurts, you can know how much of importance or how much of weightage you can give to that pain.
So what I do at the studio is when a child comes to me and says, this thing hurts. So one is to identify exactly which part of the body is hurting. And the second is to ask them on a scale of 1 to 10, how bad the pain is, given that being the highest and 1, which is like the most basic thing that I physiotherapists and doctors know.
Yeah.
After that, I also ask them before and after questions, how long the pain has been there, and if this is a certain movement is causing it. So if you understand the joints, even a somewhat basic understanding of joints as a parent or a teacher, you can figure out exactly what is causing it. And if you can't, this is my question, at what point do you refer them to a physio or to a doctor?
So first thing you need to determine is, so if your kids just started out at a dance class recently, it's been a month, and they've been training a lot. So the first thing you need to determine is whether the pain that they're feeling is actual pain or if they're just feeling sore.
Okay.
So that is a bit of a tricky area, because sometimes, you might think they're just sore and they might have an injury. So that kind of comes with watching your kid on a daily basis, seeing if your kid has had any sudden increase in training. So, a lot of new movement patterns have come in and they've been doing a lot of training. So usually that is something that results in soreness. But at the same time, if your kid's been overtraining, like say they've been practicing for this show that's coming up, the recital that's coming up, and they've been practicing say 6 days a week, 3-4 hours a day, that is when you start wondering if your kid's having an overuse injury. If your kid's not just sore, but and the soreness persists, but she's still training, she or he is still training, and pain keeps getting worse. So these are two things that you can look at. The third thing that you can look at is when your kid says it hurts, try to first, like you just said, try to understand which part of the body hurts. Try to understand if it's a joint, try to understand if it's a muscle, if it's just the fleshy part or if it's just a bony part, to put it very simply. And then see if the pain is there when you touch it. Like if the pain is bad at just the mildest of touches, then that's something you need to be worried about, and it's best you take the kid to a sports physician or a physio. And if it's not that bad and you need to give significant amount of pressure before the child feels it, in that case maybe you can wait a day. Maybe it's soreness, maybe ice it a bit, rest it a bit, and see how it goes. It may not need immediate attention. At the same time, look for anything like bruises, swellings. All of these can indicate an injury, so that's when you rush to a doctor. At other times maybe you can just wait.
Okay. But the step one would be to rest.
Step one would be to
stop
rest.
activity.
Exactly. Irrespective of whether it's soreness or pain.
Yeah. And let's talk about injuries. So now say we understand that this is not soreness, that is actually an injury. I would first like you to give people a perspective on injuries are normal. They are a part of life, even important for children to get injured. I know this child, extremely active kid, great imagination, physically very, very active. When he was 2 years old, he broke his arm. When he was 4 years old, he had something in his finger. He's 6 now. But I like the way the parents handle him. They don't try to stop him. They are careful. They keep a watchful eye, but they accept that a child this active, with all the imagination that he has, they're not trying to restrict it and trying to cage him in. They let him play. They let him go out and engage and learn safely, because a child, I think, once he puts his hand into a fire, he learns.
Exactly.
Yeah. So injuries are to normalize that understanding especially for parents who tend to be like very, very scared.
So I think we discussed this last session as well. So and this cannot get enough emphasis. We'd have to keep repeating it. Parents need to understand it's okay. It's okay for your kids to fall down. It's okay for them to even hurt themselves. It's when the kid hurts himself or herself that she understands, okay, this is a movement pattern that will hurt me. And even if she still has to continue doing that particular movement pattern, she'll learn how to work around the injury. She will learn how not to get injured the next time. So they're all part of the learning curve. They're all part of the process of their growth. And also it develops so much of mental toughness, like we spoke last time, handling those injuries. And especially if they are in a group sport, if they are in a group dance class, how kids come together to help them through that injury.
Oh, that is
so much of a community building exercise in itself.
Yes.
So all of this is so important. Like, I mean, even if your kid is less than a year old and your kid falls, don't go running and picking him or her up immediately. It's okay. It's okay. As far as they've not they had this massive fall where they fell off the bed and onto the floor. If it's a small fall, it's crawling on the ground and he just fell. It's okay. He learns that next time this movement makes me fall.
Yeah. And children are very smart and intuitive that way.
Exactly. Yeah. And all we need to do is keep a watchful eye, stay a little away, nudge them in the right direction. That's it. They're going to do things by themselves. They're going to learn how to do it by themselves. I mean, when you look at the core of things, we are all animals. I mean, you've never seen another animal like a lion or even a bird protecting their young one.
Yeah.
In fact, I've actually had birds, nest in my apartment, and the only thing I've always noticed, it's something that awes me, is how the mother bird always pushes the chick out of the nest.
Mhm.
and says, just go fly. But we, as humans, we never do that. We're like, no, 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 come back in, come back in, come back in. Let me protect you. And that is something we really shouldn't be doing. We need to be pushing those kids out of the nest,
Yeah.
pushing them out of their
The
comfort zone,
urge
let
to
them
pull
fall.
back is very normal because it comes from a place of fear. But I think
Exactly.
parents need to understand where this is coming from and maybe not project it on the kid unless and until it's a
Exactly.
real danger, which as adults we know when it's real and when it's just, the child will get over it. I have the student, she's I think 11 now, and
Mhm.
she always tends to get injured for some reason. And one I think
Okay.
I've identified is there's a weakness in one ankle disproportionate to the
Mhm.
other ankle. So if she strengthens that, she'll stop twisting the same ankle over and over. But even generally, like she's allowed to play outside for hours at a time. And I've seen how much of a difference that makes in her personality, how easy she is able to connect with others, the empathy she has. And how resilient she is, and not as fearful of trying new things, of moving and not questioning like, hey, I'm not going to try that because I might get injured.
So true, so true.
Let's just
And
go.
there comes a maturity of handling situations as well. You see that very young in kids who go out and play and aren't scared of falling, like you said.
Yeah.
So
And this thing that you said about community where children come and, hey, are you all right, are you okay?
I know.
Lots of resilience. I had this 6-year-old student in my class, and I
Hmm.
want to share this because children have this innate courage and strength in them as well, and it's like a muscle. The more you practice it, the more it builds, which is what I believe. This kid, someone did a cartwheel and hit her square on the lip with her leg, and
Okay.
it was a good deep gash, and her lip
Okay.
was bleeding. So I went to her. I said, "Are you okay? Like on a scale of 1 to 10, how badly does it hurt?" We wiped the blood away and everything. I said, "Do you want to go home?" And her reply was, "No, I want to finish my lesson." I'm like,
Wow.
why? She's like, I want to do the dance and then I want to go home. So I knew that she was in that space where she should go home, but I don't like forcing children to do something they don't want to do. So we did a negotiation where I called the mom in and I'm like, so she's gotten a bit injured, but the rest of her body is fine. And she still wants to do the dance. So whatever we had prepared for the end of the class, I'm just going to fast forward it, do it in the next 3 minutes. So she feels like she's done what she wanted to do, give her that opportunity and then send her home. So that's exactly what we did. And I felt like as a teacher, that was a good moment for me. I felt that the student felt like, oh, I pushed through pain, I did something.
Hmm.
Not like crazy pain. The lip was here, the leg is there. But it was a great incident, and I've quoted it often to other parents. And this is a great opportunity to share it with everyone else.
It's definitely, you see the kind of maturity the kid has, and that kid's going to grow up knowing that she can do things.
She can do things. Yeah.
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 And that's so important.
Yeah. So let's come to training. Here's a few questions I wanted to ask.
Hmm.
How do we pace out training for kids? Let's not talk 3 to 5 because they're still doing playful movements and
Yeah.
all, even 6-year-olds, but say 7 and above who are taking
Hmm.
training seriously, whether it's gymnastics or badminton. How should they pace out their training? What is overloading and what are
Hmm.
overuse injuries? So pacing out training in children, to just recap what we discussed in the last session is that we should expose children to different kinds of movement patterns up till the age of say 11 to 12, around the time they hit puberty, and then start specialization. But we're going to go back and talk a little bit more in detail about that. So pacing
Hmm.
out training, what do you think?
Yeah. So about 6 to 7, that's the age when you start putting your kids in a specific, movement pattern, in a specific sport, in a specific dance. So we need to be mindful of that when we plan their training, when we pace out their training. And like we said, we should try as much as possible not to go into specialization.
Mhm.
So whatever training forms we choose, we need to make sure it complements what their primary sport is, while not being entirely, it shouldn't be something that goes in the same line. It should be
An
a
example.
pardon me.
Could you give us an example?
Okay. So for example, what I would suggest is, say a person's going into ballet.
Mhm.
I would say, if you're going to, when a person's going into ballet, doing gymnastics side by side is almost, prepping them for ballet.
Mhm.
It's prepping their body for ballet. So in that case, what I would say is, okay, you're doing ballet, you're doing gymnastics, both of which are important, but you have to do, say, a session of swimming,
Mhm.
or you have to do, at least once a week, go out and play tennis. So it gives them it gives them the necessary cardio work. It gives them the necessary strength work as well, while not going in the same line as their primary sport. So it prevents the specialization while still giving them the necessary training that they need.
Okay. And in the absence of that, we get overuse injuries. So can you define what overuse injuries are and how common?
So yeah, that's very, very common. And funnily, it's even common among elite athletes as well. So what is overuse injuries? Basically, when it commonly how it happens is scenario A, parents, they want their kids to do better, do better, do better. And they keep telling, you have to practice more. You finished your prior class, you came home, practice another hour.
Mhm.
And that when it happens, say 6, 7 days a week, the kid's getting exhausted. The kid's muscles and the same movement patterns are getting overused. They, literally the word overuse. They constantly being used again and again and again, and they don't have rest and recovery. The most important aspect of any sport, be it aesthetic or otherwise, is the right amount of recovery, is the right amount of rest, which is something that people tend to overlook, especially in the Indian setting where we're like very much competitive. So we tend to overlook the amount of rest and recovery we need. So we need to give that an important, set aside some time for it.
Mhm.
Pace out, just like we said, pace out your training.
Mhm.
You do not have to train 7 days a week. 4 days a week is more than enough. And that is like I'm saying above 12, 13 years. If you're going to be 5, 6 years, 3 days a week is enough. 3 days a week of training and the other days of free play, free unmonitored play is more than sufficient.
Okay. So
So
coming back to the question of overuse injuries. So in more technical terms, could you explain the muscular imbalances that develop, joint instability? I've seen overstretching in children. So children are mobile, parents get very excited. Oh, my kid can do a full split when they're 4 or 5 years old. And I'm like, okay, my focus right now would be to strengthen the joints and make sure that the mobility is controlled versus just like stretching them
doing
out too much. I am concerned when children are too flexible. It's a matter of concern, not a great thing.
so true.
So yeah, so in terms of joints and joint stability and imbalances that develop, and then eventually pain.
So the first thing in that line, what we need to understand is now we're talking about kids, is that their joints, their bony joints, their bone to muscle, the tendons, the ligaments, everything is developing. It's still not fully developed. So whatever movement patterns you're giving them right now are going to literally shape how those muscles and how those bones grow, how they develop.
Mhm.
Okay. And when you give them, let's take a full split, for example. So a parent is excited, wow, my kid can do a full split, and they make the kid do it again and again and again. And even getting them in the process to doing it until your kid is ready for it, pushing them to do it because someone else kid can. What ideally happens is in a full split, we're going to look at the muscles around the hip joint. Okay, so what happens would be the tendons may not attach properly. As in attach properly in the sense is, I mean, it's already attached. What I mean to say is that they get overstretched. They can get injured. And we may not look at that injury. We may overlook that injury as soreness. And when that injury heals, first thing, we're not giving it enough time to heal. Second thing is when it does eventually heal, it's not going to reattach properly. It's not going to heal properly.
Yeah, so that's the interesting thing about muscles and ligaments, right? So muscles once stretched go back to their original size, but that doesn't happen with ligaments.
With ligaments,
You stretch them, you have stretched them, and the joint has become unstable. So we need to be careful with stretching our children too much.
And when a kid is flexible by nature, trying to push them for more flexibility is literally a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
It's literally a thumb rule. If your kid is flexible, do not put them in yoga. It's a thumb rule.
You please repeat that. If your child is too flexible, do not put them into yoga. They need more stability and strength training.
Exactly. So, if you put them in yoga, the flexibility, as in the thing that we just spoke, their ligaments, their tendons, they're going to stretch further. And it's going to make their joints so unstable that they're going to be prone for more injury than they normally would be.
Yeah.
So what you ideally need to do is the other side. You need to strengthen them. You need to start making them a little less flexible.
Yeah.
So that their joints develop that stability.
Yeah. So yeah, when we're talking about flexibility here, we're talking about the joints, the range of motion at the joint.
Range of movement of the joints, yes.
So overuse injuries happen when we train the same movement patterns over and over, whether it's in cricket or ballet or yes. And okay, we'll go to preventive measures in the end, but let's also understand what is overloading. And overloading, I know adults do as well. I know I've done that
Yes.
plenty. Yeah.
So overloading can be both a good thing and a bad thing. So it depends on how you do it. So if you're overloading in a supervised way,
Mhm.
it could actually help improve performance. This I'm talking about if someone's getting into a particular sport, even as a child, with a career in mind.
Mhm.
So again, we're talking about the age groups of above 11 or 12, not 5 and 6. So in that case, overloading can help. There's the tiniest amount of overloading with the right amount of recovery following it can actually help that muscle to, double in its performance.
You're talking about progressive loading here.
Yes, sort of. Not progressive loading. I'm not getting the word off the top of my head. But there is this technique. What we do is we do a careful bit of, so how it works is, so let's say you are taking a muscle and you're training it regularly.
Yeah.
Okay, you're training it regularly. You keep giving it the same level of movements, it's going to start getting accustomed to that level.
Mhm.
So you need to push it to go to the next level. You could either do it in a gradual way, that is progressive loading.
Mhm.
You could either do it in a small gradual way, or you could give it this one day of sudden increased levels of exercise.
Okay.
And then give it a couple of days off.
Mhm.
So what happens is your body's like, whoa, I just had this new stimulus. And then it starts adapting. And then your body starts thinking, okay, I need to be prepared for that kind of a stimulus again.
Okay. So that's the overloading you're saying in a monitored, safe
In a
manner.
monitored, safe way, that is though. If you do that regularly without the right amount of recovery after that, that is going to end up in an overloading injury, an overuse injury.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's functional overloading. Yeah, that's the word I wanted. This is called functional overloading.
Okay.
So overreaching, rather, the right word would be overreaching. So that is safe. That is safe. But overloading in general, where you aren't monitoring it, you are just training more and more, and you're like, okay, like in our setting, okay, I lifted 60 today. I'm just gonna push and try 70 tomorrow. Now that is bad. If you tried 60 today, do 61 tomorrow,
Mhm.
or 62 tomorrow. Don't go to 70.
Yeah, there's
In that case,
right, a 5% increment on a weekly basis.
weekly basis.
Yeah, like that's
Yes,
like the standard thing, but it also depends on the athlete.
very much. Yes. So that kind of overloading is literally taking you to injury.
Okay.
Which is why even overloading, it's important to be supervised. It's important to have someone who knows what they're doing help you do it.
Yeah. So the solution with overloading, from what I know, is load monitoring, which is a term that came up over and over again when I was training. And the answer to overuse injuries is, say, cross training.
Yes.
So we will come back to that later. So dangers of early specialization, we discussed this again. Overuse injuries is one of the dangers. And there are also mental health implications. Is there?
To specialization, you say?
To early specialization.
Yes, there are.
But
So,
I think, yeah, have you studied that about mental health aspect, or do we leave it to someone?
however you like, if you want to approach it now, we can. Or
Just tell us what you think about the mental health implications of early specialization, the fatigue that sets in with academic loading and everything else that kids do. Yeah.
So ideally, when a kid is going into early specialization, we need to understand how that happens first. A kid who's going into early specialization isn't doing it on a once a week basis or a twice a week basis. The parents already put them on 5 days a week class. So that in itself is pressure, first thing. So the kid has this, initially what started out as, wow, I like this game, or I like this dance, is now like, shit, my mom's going to scold me if I don't train properly today. So that is the mindset it moves to. And in addition to that, again, we are in the Indian setting. You cannot score less than 90% and your parents be happy with it. So they do have the academic pressure as well. So basically, we are putting that much of stress, that much of pressure on, say, a 7-year-old's mind.
Yeah.
And it's not right on them. We're literally causing trauma to them right there. trauma that they're going to carry on for the rest of their life. And in case they don't meet any of the the goals that they've set for themselves, or the goals that they think their parents want for them, they may or may not want. I'm not saying that the parents always want them to do that, but the kids tend to assume that when a parent pushes them to do things like that, kids tend to assume that this is what my parent wants. So if the kid doesn't get to that goal that he or she thinks that their parent wants, that is the foundation for self-respect issues,
Self-esteem drops.
self-esteem issues, and all of that. And in future, the kid starts doubting whether they'd be able to do things by themselves. So it's a lot of small things that stem out from that tiny act that we do.
So personally, as a teacher, what I would like to add is until the children reach that maturity where they have decided, like with a lot of resilience and focus, that okay, this is my sport, which is around puberty. Also physically they're ready and sound to take it up. The joy of movement should be the priority that parents should inculcate in the kids. Like, you should want to go for to move, to play a sport, to dance, to swim. They should want and look forward to it. That is more important because it is sustainable. It's going to sustain their career. It's also going to build resilience in them. Self-esteem is like a big part of it, because it's not competitive at that point. It's all about play and joy, which children absolutely need. And we come to specialization at 12 when they're mentally and physically prepared. And now they're able to set goals for themselves in a rather mature manner, not necessarily to please someone, but because it comes from within.
From themselves.
Because I think all children are trying to please parents and teachers.
So much, yes.
7 and 8 years old, they want to hear that.
It just stems from this fact that for children, their first heroes are their parents.
Yeah.
And they want to impress their first heroes. And on the note of kids wanting to come to class, wanting to do a particular movement, I think the first sign that parents need to look for is when your kid starts making excuses about going to class.
Yeah.
When your kids start making excuses, that's when you've pushed it too far.
Yeah.
The kid doesn't want to go anymore.
Yeah.
So do not get there. Do not get there. Just let the kid enjoy the class.
There has to be a fine balance to be played here between making it disciplined and there's still a learning outcome that teachers and parents have in mind, while also maintaining that the kids experience joy and pleasure and love looking, and they look forward to that class and still build a community, and that is so important.
The class needs to release endorphins for them.
Yeah, not cortisol.
Exactly.
Yeah. So okay, one important thing I want to talk about is rest and recovery. I've had children walk into the classroom, because I get it that they want to be very disciplined and focused about it and to show that they're committed, but they've come into the class when they already have fever, and this is pre-COVID.
Okay.
And I've had to be, and they're like, no, ma'am, I still want to do the class, because I said, I respect that, what you're trying to do here, but go home. Your fever is your body telling you need to rest. You need to respect your body. If you need that 12, 13 hours of sleep, get that sleep. We are not aiming for dysfunctional children and adults who can't get the required amount of sleep and manage their time, all those things. So rest and recovery, how important it is, whether children are playing a sport or not. Like, can you just talk about that?
Yes, very much. So you see how we start with, when a kid is a newborn, they say the kid sleeps at least 20 hours a day. And then it slowly goes up from there. And when you're an adult, it's like 8 hours. Although people have started saying 4 or 5 hours is enough, which is wrong. But yeah. So what you need to do is respect that progression. Your kid, like we spoke in last session, your kid has such a high metabolic rate. Your kid has so much of activity going on that the body needs that rest for it to recuperate, to get ready to go through that cycle of activity the next day again. If not, your kid's going to go into very early burnout, which is again not healthy, which is literally it's a start point on the road to overuse injuries. Yeah,
not getting enough rest. Yeah.
Exactly. So it's so important that your kid gets a full night's sleep. And if your kid hasn't been able to get that for some reason, make sure to compensate it in some way. Make sure the kid gets another hour or two in the afternoon somewhere, but the kid needs that rest. And if just as important as free play, free movement is, that important is downtime.
Mhm.
The kid needs to also be able to sit down, read a book,
Mhm.
just relax, unwind
Mhm.
without having to run around. The kid also needs to learn how to sit in one place for a little while.
Yeah.
I know it's like parents are probably like, what do you want us to do now? Do you want them to play or do you want them to sit down? But it's a balance.
Yeah.
You need to be able
And
to give them that.
kids know, like when they're tired from everything, and books, because they really uh, squeeze your imagination in different ways. So if there's an early exposure to books, or I could
Mhm.
do a whole session on the importance of reading and books for
So
kids.
true.
So yeah, I think the kids know, and you can sense it because it's your child, right? And then you send
Mhm.
them off to read. And on that note, I'm very tempted to talk about screen time and children,
Very
but
much. Yes.
yes, we'll
Please
keep
do.
that
Please
for
do.
yeah, we'll keep that for later, because I know children are going to bed later and later because they are taking more screen
The
time.
impact of blue light as well.
Yes, on their circadian rhythm, on the sleep
Exactly.
cycle.
Yes.
Yes. So how important it is to get all that blue light and all kinds of light out an hour before, and then the kids should go to sleep. So kids need to sleep, and if they're injured or unwell, they need to rest and skip classes. It's okay. It teaches them that it's okay to take a break
It's
for.
okay. Yes.
Yes.
It teaches them to put themselves first. Their goals can get, we can get there, but put yourself, put your health first.
Yes, that is so important, because we see this culture of my productivity is everything, and are you being creative all the time in my field, or
Mhm.
productive in other fields, and which has different meanings in different fields anyway. But yeah, there's that intense pressure to be doing something all the time.
So
And
true.
yeah, so the downtime, there's barely any downtime for most adults. And when I see the children in my class, I don't want that life for them.
I think adults also need to focus on a bit of downtime.
Yeah, like on that me time, like I got to get to bed at this time, and I got to wake up at this time because the body needs it. Can you talk a little bit about the circadian rhythm?
Yeah. So the circadian rhythm is in the most simplest form is basically your biological clock. When I say biological clock, I don't mean your entire lifespan. I mean on a daily basis.
Mhm.
I mean how your body sets. How does your body know when to be hungry and when it's time to sleep? There are other factors as well. There are other factors as energy burnout and things like that. But you see how your body sets itself when you go from time zone to time zone.
Yeah,
All of that comes down to circadian rhythm. And there is research that says that circadian rhythm depends on sunlight, on daylight and nighttime. So your body matches that. Your body matches when there's a sunrise, it knows it's time to be awake.
that's due to a release of certain hormones, right? As the sun
Exactly.
sets and the sun rises,
Yes.
it's as normal to us and as natural and biological as humanity, as old as that.
As old as that. Yes. So irrespective of where you are in the world, your body starts resetting itself.
Mhm.
It's when you move from time zone to time zone, it resets itself. It fixes itself within a day or two to match the sunrise and sunset of that place.
Mhm.
And the same way, in order to keep that cycle proper,
Mhm.
you need to go to bed at the right time. You need to eat at the right time. You need to let the body do its functions,
Yeah.
for which you need to give it the right amount of fuel, the right amount of energy, the right amount of rest, everything. So that is how the circadian rhythm works. And this is like the most primitive way I can explain it. So
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, and what that leads to is good mental and physical health in the long run. And that is
Very
something we
much,
should
yes.
model for our children as well, because what they see us do is what they're
Mhm.
eventually going to end up doing. Yeah. So, yeah, so we've talked about a lot of things. Um, and yes, so the training and overuse and specialization, all of that is there. We also talked about the importance of supplementing all this with adequate rest, sleep, and recovery. And then there's nutrition is the other angle to it, for which I will be talking to a nutritionist. Dr. Harini, are you there?
Nutritionist. Yes, I am.
There's a
Is,
bit
is,
of,
is it, am I clear?
yes, there's a little bit of a lag sometimes. I think it's an internet thing. So
Okay.
let's coming back to ballet, common injuries in ballet. We'll just go through it quickly and then summarize the whole thing.
Okay. So when we look at ballet, uh, I mean, you know it better, but I'm just gonna throw around a few words. So there are different styles when it comes to ballet, but like contemporary, like jazz. like classical ballet. But the one thing that is common to almost all, even though the techniques are different, is that the most common injury in all of them are tendinopathies. Tendinopathies are basically what happens is it's like it starts out as inflammations to the tendon,
Mhm.
which we call tendinitis,
Mhm.
and it starts progressing to becoming more serious injuries. And if not looked at in the right time, it can even end up in a rupture, in a tear of the tendon itself. So a tendinopathy is a continuum. It's not just one stage. It's the
Mhm.
whole process of a tendon injury, and this is the most common injury that you see in ballet.
Okay.
And also, I think this should be fairly obvious, but then again, research also shows that the most common joints that get injured in ballet are the ankle joint and the knee joint.
Mhm.
So these are things that we keep in mind when we're looking at people who are into dance generally, and specifically ballet.
Mhm. Okay. And the right way to deal with is cross training and strength training. That
Very
helps.
much.
Yeah.
Yes. So
Yes. So
cross
now
training, strength training, rest and recovery.
rest and recovery and with nutrition.
Nutrition, yes.
Yeah, so we discussed that improper training can lead to overuse injuries and overloading. And the
Mhm,
solution to overloading is load monitoring. So to
mhm.
give you an example, I think Dr. Harini, it was you, the sheet that you sent me about so what different activities that individual to individual it differs,
Mhm.
what they do, how many hours they put into that, and what is the intensity of it, and then you figure out what is the overall load in the body. So this is
Yes,
an attempt to quantify how much load we are facing on a
yes.
day-to-day basis, and then therefore have a reference and monitor that so as not to lead to
On a
overuse.
weekly basis, yes.
Yes. So this is something which even parents of athletic children can do, is to monitor their load. Cross training is a solution to overuse injuries as well. So could you give an example of what would be an appropriate cross training method for a dancer, a ballet dancer or a contemporary dancer?
Okay. So let's say any ballet dancer. A good cross training for them would be a session of strength training every,
One
simply
side.
put. At least one session. Ideally would be 2 to 3 sessions to help rehabilitate their ligaments, to help rehabilitate their tendons. But at least one session of full blown strength. I would even say maybe a lifting session. Maybe a session. I mean, lifting, when I say lifting, I mean powerlifting. So that would be an ideal cross training, because in ballet, most of your movements are, they're very flexible, they're very fluid. So just that we did the same thing that we spoke at the start of the session. We need to counter that fluidity with strength.
Got it.
So that would be a good cross training for someone who's into dance.
Mhm. Okay.
At least one day a week, but ideally 2 to 3 days a week.
And what age group do we start that kind of cross training?
Definitely beyond 11, not below. Below 11, like we spoke, put them in other sport. Do
Okay.
not put them into specialized training.
Okay. Okay. And the dangers of early specialization in children leading to burnout mentally and physically is again something we discussed. Okay. I think we've covered everything that I had in mind.
Mhm.
We need to
Okay.
summarize it now in Tamil and in Hindi.
Awesome.
Do you understand Hindi, Dr. Harini?
I do, but I just speak very poorly, but I can understand what you say. So maybe you go first, and then I'm going to derive points from that and go ahead and tell it.
Okay. Not easy for me either. I have lived in Chennai for 9 years now. So, okay. So आज हमारी बात हुई पेन, दर्द के बारे में, फिजिकल पेन. ये नॉर्मल है, बच्चे जब किसी एक्टिविटी में एंगेज्ड होते हैं तो इंजरीज होना उनके जॉइंट्स में या उनके मसल्स में, ये बहुत ही नॉर्मल सी चीज़ है. Now, this is... Oh, I have a question before we go. Would stationary
Sure.
biking be a good cross-training activity for my 11-year-old ballerina? She's been complaining of knee pain during a plie.
With stationary biking,
Yes,
has been complaining of pain where?
in her knee.
Stationary biking is actually a good choice as compared to jogging or running. But what would be the most ideal would be swimming.
swimming is the most ideal
Most ideal.
because it takes the load off your knee joint.
Exactly, off your joint.
Gives it time to recover. And
But if you don't have access to a pool, then stationary biking is a good alternate.
okay, so how long, how frequently, and until what point of time?
I would have to know the age of the child for that. I'm just going to assume, say, 10 years,
11
maybe.
years.
11 years. Okay, so in that case, stationary biking for just maybe 10 to 15 minutes a day. Don't try to push too much of intensity. Just let her enjoy the cycling process. Maybe in that 15 minutes, let her do a little bit of intensity. Make it like a fun competition or something. For a couple of minutes, every 2 to 3 minutes, give her a 1 minute of speed and then off, speed and off. This will also improve her cardiovascular ability at the same time.
Yeah. And to constantly check with the child if she's in pain. If the biking also causes pain.
Exactly.
Consult a physiotherapist.
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, back to the summarize in Hindi.
Yes.
My poor attempt. Yeah, so हमने बात की कि जब कोई भी बच्चा चाहे वो एज ग्रुप 5 से लेके 15 साल की उम्र में मूवमेंट, स्पोर्ट्स, डांस, इन सब की वजह से काफ़ी सारे बेनिफिट्स हैं, मेंटल हेल्थ बेनिफिट्स हैं, शारीरिक रूप से बच्चों में बहुत विकास होता है, बट कभी कभी इंजरीज होती हैं और ये बिल्कुल ही नॉर्मल है. इनको कैसे हैंडल करना चाहिए एज अ पेरेंट और अ टीचर? सबसे पहली बात, पेन विच वी टॉक्ड अबाउट इज वेरी सब्जेक्टिव, एज इन दर्द का मतलब एक साइंटिफिक बुक में लिखा हुआ नहीं है कि ये दर्द इतना अमाउंट इस बच्चे को इसका ये मतलब होता है. दर्द बहुत ही सब्जेक्टिव है, एक बच्चे से दूसरे बच्चे में, एक एडल्ट से दूसरे एडल्ट में वो डिफरेंट होगा. तो आपको असेस करना होगा कि दर्द कहाँ है, छूने से क्या वहां पर दर्द होता है, और कितने वक्त से बच्चा दर्द की कंप्लेंट्स कर रहा है. फिर ये दर्द हाँ एग्जैक्टली किस एरिया में है उसको आइडेंटिफाई करें. वहां पर ब्रूजिंग या स्वेलिंग है, या वो जहां पर दर्द है वहां फूला हुआ है या नहीं वो हिस्सा. तो ये सारे कुछ क्वेश्चंस हैं जो आप उस समय देख सकते हैं. अगर जरूरत पड़े तो फिर आप फिजियोथेरेपिस्ट या ऑर्थो के पास जाएं और फिर वैसे प्रोसीड करें. बट दर्द नॉर्मल है और चोट लगना नॉर्मल है, इंजरीज नॉर्मल है, चाहे वो मांसपेशियों में हो चाहे वो सरफेस इंजरीज हो, इट्स वेरी नॉर्मल. और बच्चों में जब इंजरीज हो तो कुछ हद तक टिल इट्स सेफ होने दे, क्योंकि बच्चा जब भी उसे चोट लगती है वो उससे कुछ सीखता है, उसके सेंट्रल नर्वस सिस्टम में चेंजेस आते हैं और वो उसके डेवलपमेंट का, उसके परवरिश का एक बहुत ही जरूरी हिस्सा है. हमने फिर बात की कि डांस में कुछ कॉमन इंजरीज क्या होती है. तो हमारे बैले इज द डांस वी टॉक्ड अबाउट. बैले में इंजरीज ज्यादातर, oh my god, ankle, what do you call ankle in Hindi? Okay, so ankle की इंजरीज और घुटने की इंजरीज बहुत कॉमन है. एंड अगेन वो इंजरीज को एड्रेस करना सही तरीके से सही वक्त पे बहुत जरूरी है. ट्रेनिंग बच्चों में 12 साल के जो कम उम्र के बच्चे हैं उनके लिए उनकी जो डांस ट्रेनिंग है या कोई भी स्पोर्ट में वो ट्रेन कर रहे हैं उसके लिए एक सप्लीमेंटल ट्रेनिंग प्रोग्राम होना चाहिए, जो कि बिल्कुल एग्जैक्टली फॉर एग्जांपल अगर आपका बच्चा फुटबॉल खेलता है तो उसकी सप्लीमेंटल ट्रेनिंग फुटबॉल जैसी दिखनी नहीं चाहिए, इट विल बी डिफरेंट. तो वो आपके कोच उसमें गाइड कर सकते हैं. डांस के केस में वेट लिफ्टिंग इज एक्चुअली गुड जब बच्चा 11-12 साल की उम्र तक पहुंच जाए. उसके पहले आई थिंक जॉय ऑफ मूवमेंट इज मोर इम्पोर्टेंट, कि क्लास जाना पसंद आए, ज्यादा ओवरलोडिंग ना हो मेंटली बच्चों को. लास्टली खुशी बच्चे की बहुत मैटर करती है. तो ट्रेनिंग को पेस आउट करना लाइक 3 से 4 दिन सप्ताह में काफी है. बहुत ज्यादा ट्रेनिंग करने से ओवरलोडिंग और ओवरयूज इंजरीज की संभावना बढ़ जाती है. ओवरयूज इंजरीज एज इन की सेम वही सारी जोड़ें जो है शरीर में और मांसपेशियां हैं उन्हीं का बार बार इस्तेमाल हो रहा है, बाकियों का नहीं हो रहा, तो वहां पर एक बैलेंस की कमी हो जाती है और उस वजह से फिर नए प्रॉब्लम्स, नए पेन, नया दर्द स्टार्ट हो जाता है. ओवरयूज इंजरीज हुई ये. फिर इसको अवॉइड करने के लिए एक है लोड मॉनिटरिंग कि कितना ओवरऑल लोड बच्चे के शारीरिक और मानसिक स्तर पे उस पर पड़ रहा है. एकेडमिक लोड आल्सो मैटर्स इन दैट केस, राइट डॉक्टर हरिणी? Like
yes,
load,
very much.
Load includes everything.
Mental loading.
Yes, because the body functions that way. Mind and body go together. So when you say load monitoring, we're not just talking about loads on your joints, but also on your head. तो हाँ, कुछ प्रिवेंटिव मेजर्स के बारे में हमने बात की. रेस्ट कर लेना, इंजरीज है या तबीयत खराब है उससे पहले रिकवर करना, प्रॉपर न्यूट्रिशन, ये सारी चीज़ें प्रिवेंटिव मेजर्स में आती हैं कि कैसे इंजरीज कम हो, क्योंकि आप कंप्लीटली उसको हटा तो नहीं सकते। इसके अलावा हमने बात की, I think that's it. There's one thing I wanted to talk about, Dr. Harni, was the posterior chain and how to train. I think we covered it in the first
last session. Yes, we did.
Yeah. Okay, so we will leave it for now. If people want to refer, they can go back to that video. So yes, now your turn to summarize this in Tamil.
First thing, I was making notes when you were saying it, so now I have a reference point. Okay, so இன்னைக்கு லைவ்ல வந்து நாங்க பேசினது போன செஷனோட கண்டினியூவேஷன். குழந்தைங்க வந்து மூவ்மெண்ட் பண்ணும்போது, குழந்தைங்க வந்து ஒரு டான்ஸோ ஒரு ஸ்போர்ட்லயோ ஈடுபடும் போது இன்ஜுரிஸ், கீழே விழுறதோ அடிபடுறதோ இது ரொம்ப நார்மல். அதை விட முக்கியம் வலி வந்து ரொம்ப நார்மல். பட் ஆனா வலின்னு நம்ம சொல்லும் போது எல்லா குழந்தைங்களுக்கும் வலி ஒரே மாதிரி இருக்காது. பெரியவங்களுக்குள்ளே உங்களுக்கும் எனக்கும் வலி ஒரே மாதிரி இருக்காது. சோ நம்ம வந்து ஒரு குழந்தை வந்து வலிக்குதுன்னு சொல்லும் போது நம்ம அதுக்கு வந்து ஒரு இம்பார்ட்டன்ஸ் கொடுக்கணும். அவங்க வலி வந்து இன்னைக்கு இப்ப வலிக்குதா, இதுக்கு முன்னால எப்படி இருந்தது, இந்த வலி எப்போ ஆரம்பிச்சது, எல்லாமே நம்ம கேட்டு தெரிஞ்சுக்கிட்டு இந்த வலி வந்து ஒரு அடிப்பட்டதுனால வந்ததா இல்ல நம்ம ட்ரைனிங் பண்றதுனால ஒரு சோர்னஸ். ஏன்னா யூஸ்வலா நம்ம வந்து கொஞ்சம் புது ட்ரைனிங் புதுசா ஏதாச்சும் ஒரு மூவ்மெண்ட் பேட்டர்ன் கொண்டு வரும்போது ஒரு சோர்னஸ் ஒன்று டெவலப் ஆகும். ஏன்னா மசில் வந்து அந்த மூவ்மெண்ட் பண்ணது இல்லை இதுக்கு முன்ன. புதுசா ஒரு மூவ்மெண்ட் கொடுக்கும்போது மசில் அதுக்கு அடாப்ட் பண்ண ட்ரை பண்ணும்போது ஒரு சோர்னஸ் கொடுக்கும். சோ அந்த சோர்னஸ் தான் அப்படின்றப்போ நம்ம அதை பத்தி கவலைப்பட தேவையில்லை. ஆனா அதேதான் அது வந்து ஒரு இன்ஜுரியா இருக்கலாம், ஒரு எங்கேயாச்சும் உள்ள ஒரு உள்காயம் வந்திருக்கலாம். அப்படி ஏதாச்சும் வந்திருக்கு அப்படின்றப்போ நம்ம அது என்னன்றதை பார்க்கணும். எஸ்பெஷலி குழந்தைங்களுக்குன்றப்போ நம்ம என்னன்றதை பார்க்கணும், உடனே அதை கவனிக்கணும், அதை ட்ரீட் பண்ணணும். சோ அதை வந்து நம்ம எப்படி பேரண்ட்ஸா நம்ம வந்து நோட் பண்ணணும்னா குழந்தைக்கு ஆரம்பத்துல இருந்தே கவனிக்கணும். அந்த குழந்தைக்கு வந்து சாதாரணமா இப்படி விழுந்தா எவ்வளவு வலி இருக்கு அப்படின்றத நம்ம காஜ் பண்ணிக்கிட்டே வந்தாதான் அந்த குழந்தை வந்து அம்மா எனக்கு இவ்வளவு வலிக்குது அப்படின்னு வந்து உங்ககிட்ட சொல்லும் போது ஓகே இது நிஜமாவே வலிதானா, இல்ல அந்த குழந்தை வந்து அது ஒண்ணுமே இல்லாததா அதிகமா நினைக்குதா, இல்ல நிஜமா அதிகமா இருக்கிறத கம்மியா நினைக்குதா, இது எல்லாமே நம்ம வந்து புரிஞ்சுக்க முடியும். சோ அது ரொம்ப ரொம்ப இம்பார்ட்டன்ட். பெயின் இஸ் சப்ஜெக்டிவ்னு சொல்லுவோம். சப்ஜெக்டிவ்னா ஒவ்வொருத்தவங்களுக்கும் ஒவ்வொரு மாதிரி இருக்கும். இன்னொரு விஷயம் என்னன்னா நம்ம வந்து குழந்தைங்களுக்கு இப்படி அடிப்படுதுன்னு சொல்லிட்டு நம்ம உடனே வந்து ஐயோ நீ குழந்தைக்கு கீழே விழக்கூடாது, நான் என் குழந்தைய பாத்துக்கணும் அது அப்படின்னு நினைச்சிட்டு நம்ம இன்னொரு தடவை அந்த மாதிரி பண்ணாம தடுக்கும் போது என்ன ஆகுதுன்னா அந்த குழந்தைக்கு வந்து நம்மளால அதை பண்ண முடியாதோ அப்படிங்கிற ஒரு எண்ணம் வர்றதுக்கு சான்ஸ் இருக்கு. இது வந்து நம்ம அவாய்ட் பண்ணணும். விழுறாங்களா பரவாயில்ல விழட்டும், ஒரு 2 தடவை விழும்போதுதான் அந்த குழந்தைக்கு விழுந்தாலும் பரவாயில்ல என்னால முடியும், நான் ஏஞ்சி பண்ணுவேன் அப்படிங்கிற தைரியம் வரும். இன்னொன்னு ஒரு கிளாஸ்லயோ ஒரு குரூப்லயோ அந்த மாதிரி விழும்போது ஓகே ஒரு குழந்தை விழுந்தோடனே இன்னொரு 4 குழந்தைங்க சேர்ந்து வந்து அந்த குழந்தைய தூக்கி விட்டு என்ன ஆச்சு, நான் ஹெல்ப் பண்ணட்டுமா, நான் அவனை தூக்கிட்டு போடுவோம், பேக்கை தூக்கிட்டு வரேன், இந்த மாதிரி எல்லாம் பண்ணும்போது ஓகே நம்ம ஹெல்ப் பண்ணணும். ஒவ்வொருத்தவங்களுக்கு ஒரு கம்யூனிட்டி ஃபீலிங் டெவலப் ஆகும். சோ இது எல்லாமே இம்பார்ட்டன்ட். சின்ன சின்ன விஷயமா தெரியும், பட் இது எல்லாமே வந்து அவங்க வளர வளர அவங்களுக்கு அது ரொம்ப இம்பார்ட்டன்ட். இல்லைன்னா ஒரு வளர்ந்து ஒரு பெரிய ஆள் ஆகும்போது இது வந்து நமக்கே தெரியாம அந்த ஒரு ஃபீலிங் இல்லாம போயிடும். இன்னொன்னு வந்து இப்போ ஒரு குழந்தை வந்து உங்களுக்கு வலின்னு வந்து நிக்குது அப்படிங்கிறப்போ அந்த வலி வந்து எங்க இருக்கு அப்படின்றத ஃபர்ஸ்ட் பாருங்க. அது தொட்டா வலிக்குதா, தொட்ட உடனே வலிக்குதா, கொஞ்சம் அழுத்துனா வலிக்குதா, அங்க ஏதாச்சும் வீக்கம் இருக்கா, செவந்து இருக்கா, இதெல்லாமே பார்த்தாலே உங்களுக்கு வந்து நான் சொன்ன அந்த சோர்னஸா இல்ல உள்காயமான்றதுக்கு ஒரு ஐடியா கிடைக்கும். உள்காயம்னா தயவு செஞ்சு உடனே ஒரு பிசியோதெரபிஸ்டோ ஒரு ஸ்போர்ட்ஸ் பிசிஷியனோ ஒரு ஈவன் உங்க ஏரியால இருக்கிற ஒரு லோக்கல் டாக்டரோ ஒரு ஜிபி டாக்டரோ யார்கிட்டயாச்சும் கூட்டிட்டு போய் காமிச்சிருங்க. அடுத்தது நாங்க என்ன பேசணும்னா டான்ஸ்ல வந்து இன்ஜுரிஸ் வருமா அப்படின்னு நிறைய பேர் கேட்பீங்க. கண்டிப்பா வரும். டான்ஸும் ஒரு ஸ்போர்ட், அதுதான் நம்ம ஃபர்ஸ்ட் அண்டர்ஸ்டாண்ட் பண்ண வேண்டிய விஷயம். டான்ஸ்ல வந்து முக்காவாசி இன்ஜுரி வந்து எங்கன்னா ஆங்கிள் வரும், முழங்கால் சொல்லும், ஆங்கிள் தான் நிறைய இன்ஜுரிஸ் வரும். அதுல இன்னும் முக்கியமா அதாவது மசில்ல வர்றதை விட டெண்டன்ஸ்ல அதிகமா வரும். டெண்டன்ஸ்ல இன்ஜுரிஸ் அதிகமா வரும்போது அது ஹீல் ஆகிறதுக்கு, அது குணமடைகிறதுக்கு டைம் நிறைய எடுக்கும் மசிலை விட. சோ அது எல்லாமே நம்ம வந்து கேர்ஃபுல்லா இருக்கணும். அதை நம்ம எப்படி அவாய்ட் பண்ணலாம் அப்படின்றது வந்து ஆரம்பத்துல இருந்தே இதுதான் நமக்கு டான்ஸ் பேட்டர்ன், இதுதான் நம்மளோட மூவ்மெண்ட் பேட்டர்னுங்கிறப்போ அதை கவுண்டர் பண்ற மாதிரியான ஆக்டிவிட்டிஸும் நம்ம கொடுத்துக்கிட்டே இருக்கணும். ஒரே மாதிரி ஆக்டிவிட்டி நிறைய கொடுக்க அதுவும் ஒரு டான்ஸ் கிளாஸ் நம்ம வாரத்துல 3 நாள் வைக்கிறோன்றப்போ நம்ம வீட்டுக்கு வந்து குழந்தைங்களை வந்து பரவாயில்ல நீ இன்னொரு 1 hour ப்ராக்டிஸ் பண்ணு, இல்ல 3 நாள் தான் கிளாஸ்னா போதுமா, நீ வந்து மீதி 3 நாள் நீ வீட்டுல ப்ராக்டிஸ் அப்படி பண்ண வைக்கும் போது என்ன ஆகும்னா அந்த குழந்தைக்கு அது வந்து ஓவர் யூஸ் இன்ஜுரி ஆயிரும். ஒரே பேட்டர்னை வந்து திரும்ப பண்ற மாதிரி ஆகும்போது ஓவர் யூஸ் இன்ஜுரி ஆகிறதுக்கு சான்ஸ் இருக்கு. சோ இதையும் நம்ம வந்து கவனமா இருக்கணும். ஓவர் யூஸ் இன்ஜுரி இல்லாம பாத்துக்கணும். கரெக்டான அமௌண்ட் கொடுத்துட்டு ஆப்போசிட் ஸ்டைல் ஆஃப் மூவ்மெண்ட்ஸ் எல்லாத்தையுமே கொடுக்கணும். லோட் மானிட்டரிங்னு சொல்லுவோம். நம்ம வந்து எந்த அளவுக்கு அந்த லோட் கொடுக்குறோம் அந்த குழந்தைக்கு, எந்த அளவுக்கு அவங்கள வந்து ஒர்க் பண்ண வைக்கிறோன்றதுல கவனமா இருக்கணும். ரொம்ப அதிகமா பண்ணிட்டு அந்த லோட் மானிட்டரிங் வந்து இப்ப அவங்க சொன்ன மாதிரி மைண்டையும் சம்பந்தப்பட்டது. ஏன்னா அவங்க குழந்தைங்க ஸ்கூலுக்கும் போறாங்க, படிக்கணும், எக்ஸாமுக்கு ப்ரிப்பேர் பண்ணணும், எல்லாமே பண்ணுன்றப்போ அவங்களுக்கு மென்டலா அது ஒரு ஃபெட்டிக் ஆயிரும், ப்ரெஷர் ஆகும், ஸ்ட்ரெஸ் ஆகும். நீங்க ஒரு 7 வயசு குழந்தை, ஒரு 10 வயசு குழந்தைக்கும் அவ்வளவு ஸ்ட்ரெஸ் தேவையில்லை. அது வந்து நம்ம கவனமா இருக்கணும், அது கொடுக்காம பாத்துக்கணும். அதை பார்த்துட்டாலே அவங்களே நேச்சுரலா என்ஜாய் பண்ணி பண்ணும்போது நல்லா பண்ணுவாங்க, நம்ம ஸ்ட்ரெஸ் பண்ணி பண்றதை விட. அண்ட் ரொம்ப ரொம்ப முக்கியம், இந்த செஷனோட கோர் எசன்ஸே என்னன்னா ரெஸ்ட் அண்ட் ரெக்கவரி. ரெஸ்ட், ரெக்கவரி, நியூட்ரிஷன் குழந்தைங்களுக்கு மோஸ்ட் இம்பார்ட்டன்ட். பரவாயில்ல இன்னைக்கு நைட் உட்காந்து படி, இல்ல இன்னொரு 1 hour எக்ஸ்ட்ராவா ட்ரெயின் பண்ணு, தேவையே இல்லை. அந்த குழந்தை ஒழுங்கா தூங்கி எழுந்துச்சு, ஒழுங்கா கொஞ்ச நேரம் ரிலாக்ஸ் பண்ணி ஒரு புக்கை படிக்கிறதோ, கொஞ்ச நேரம் உட்கார்ந்து விளையாடுற கேம்ஸ், கேரம் விளையாடுங்க குழந்தையோட, செஸ் விளையாடுங்க அந்த குழந்தையோட, உட்கார்ந்து விளையாடணும். எந்த அளவுக்கு ஓடி ஆடி விளையாடுறது முக்கியமோ அந்த அளவுக்கு ரெஸ்ட் எடுத்து ரிலாக்ஸ் பண்ணி பண்றதும் முக்கியம். சோ அந்த இம்பார்ட்டன்ஸ் கொடுக்கறதுக்கு தான் இந்த செஷன் இன்னைக்கு நடத்தியிருக்கோம். ஹோப்ஃபுல்லி நீங்க என்ஜாய் பண்ணிருப்பீங்க.
Wow, I understood a few bits of that. Did you get the Tamil word for ankle?
Yes, I did.
Damn it. I have to be prepared next time. Okay, so I would like to end this on actually a note to the parents that you guys are so awesome. I know, and Dr. Harini is a new parent, and I know how desperately parents want the best for their kids. And even if mistakes happen or if they push too hard, it comes from a place of love and care, sometimes misplaced, but always with the right intention. So I think as a teacher, what I would say is, as long as your intentions are right and there's an accountability and responsibility to understand what the child needs, you're doing the best job possible in the world anyway. I work with moms and dads who are barely managing in a metropolitan city, in the sense, you know, with limited resources at their disposal, and they don't have enough people to help out, and still they're managing to bring the kid to different classes. So I know how desperately parents want the best for their kids. And whatever you're doing, you're doing amazing. Just keep listening to talks like this, talks elsewhere, keep educating yourself, and your child is in good hands.
So true.
Yeah. I think parents are awesome. I think raising a child is the biggest responsibility any person has, the biggest thing one will ever do.
I think parenthood makes you realize that you can actually literally do anything.
You can.
And hats off to every parent out there.
Your son is lucky to have you, because you already at such a young age, you already know so much, and you're ready to share with other parents. So on that note, thinking about parents and children everywhere, I would like to end this talk and be back with another talk on ballet with a ballet teacher who's extremely experienced, 14 years of study in the US. I'm not going to introduce her now, but the poster will be out soon, and I would like for everybody to join in and watch, because she is amazing. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Harini. And
thank you, Prerna, for having me.
Okay, you have a good evening. Bye.
You too. Bye.